So anyway, yeah, hey, apps. Those are cool, huh? They used to be really cool though, like in the beginning. In the beginning. Billions and billions of microseconds ago, in like 2008, apps were magic. Or at least it felt like apps were magic, because like if you had a business plan and it had the word app in it, then you were good to go. And if you had an app, and that was on the App Store, like everybody had so much respect for that. It was assumed that you must have so much money. And indeed, like, if you knew Objective-C in 2008, you could pretty much name any amount of money and people would pay it to you because nobody knew Objective-C. It would be like if the government here decided there was gonna be a huge stipend for juggling. And like 2 people in the room were like, yes, my time has come. But that all changed really quickly. And I think that one of the best sort of demonstrations of how that changed is if you look at a project from 2008 that then came back a few years later. So there was this guy in the US, maybe you've heard of him, his name was Obama. And he was running for president. And this being 2008 and he being a kind of cool guy, we figured the guy should have an app. So we made him an app. And it was like a whole thing. Like, it was a whole thing. You know, it's like, Obama is so hip and cool, he's got this app, McCain is old, he doesn't have an app. Like, at the end of the election, when the magazine Newsweek wrote like this huge 14-piece expose on the election, there was a whole paragraph about this app, about an app. And not because it was like, this app did something amazing, but just because it was an app. But then consider 4 years later with the Obama 12 campaign, where they also had an app. And by all measures, it should be a better app, if only because they had 4 years of doing this stuff at their disposal. And also, instead of some senator, you had the president, right? Like, there's a significant power difference there. And yet, when I went searching for pictures of this app, I couldn't really, like, I could barely find any. Mostly I found pictures of the other app. Because like nobody really seemed to care about this app. It wasn't like in '08, where it was like, oh my God, it's an app. It was just, oh, it's an app, of course. The excitement was gone. The Silver Age had begun. You know, we had the Golden Age, and the Golden Age was nice. But now, we have the Silver Age. And you know, to a lot of us, that's kind of depressing. There's this feeling of like, this app thing is over. And for some of us, it was just starting. Who wants silver? But I would argue that silver is exactly what you want. Silver, the Silver Age of anything, that's when the money is made. Because silver is, what? This is what happens when you don't have a front display. Yeah, silver's money. Silver is good, right? Apps in 2013, they're just like websites were in 2003, right? Everybody had to have a website, and now everybody has to have an app. It's not amazing to have an app any more than it was amazing to have a website in '03, but you needed one. And somebody had to build it for you. And so the demand for the kind of services that we provide as app makers is higher than it's ever been. Indeed, silver is good. Indeed, silver is money. Literally. Our word for dollar, when I say our, I mean, you know, not just Americans, but other places in the world who use a currency called the dollar, right? You guys may know this. It comes from the name of a mine not terribly far from here in the Czech Republic, the Joachim Staller mine, which in addition to producing a bunch of uranium, also produced a bunch of silver back in the day. And they'd make these big silver coins. And everybody loved these big silver coins because you felt like you had a bunch of money. Everybody loved to walk around with $1 in their pocket, and that became our dollar. Silver is money. We like to think of gold as money, but silver is money. But it's boring, I can't lie. Like, compared to gold, who'd have silver, right? And then there's that whole dream of art. You know, that's the other thing. Like, it's nice to make money, but it's not nice to only make money, right? You want to be a little bit more than that. You want to be an artist. I want to be an artist. I said that apps were like websites, but really, apps in 2013, I just realized it's 2014 now. Great, I made the presentation in 2012, so what are you gonna do? For a little while, it was like, this guy's in the future, but now it's like, this guy's in the past. Just like apps. Yeah, it all comes together. So, it's not like apps are new, right? We've had apps even before 2008. Even before mobile, we had apps. We just didn't call them apps. We called them applications. And some of us made a bunch of money on them, right? Which is to say this, just because there was a small period where things were unusually good, and that period ended, doesn't mean that things are necessarily bad. Here's the thing about being an artist. If you want to be successful as an artist, it's not enough to merely have talent or passion. You also have to be the smartest. If you want to be an artist, you have to be the smartest. Because art is hard. This guy, Vincent van Gogh, we like to say in the Netherlands. This guy suffered for his art. A bit of an understatement. This is, to me, this is the greatest artist who ever lived, because the man, he truly was art. He truly threw himself into his art, and even though he's so un-Dutch in the way that he is, the Dutch love him. They can't help but love him. How could you not love someone so talented? But in the city of Amsterdam, where I live, where Van Gogh lived, and where he's honored with his own museum, he's not the most beloved artist. That honor goes to another artist from a previous period, this guy, Rembrandt van Rijn. This guy is like the patron saint of Amsterdam. There is a statue of him that towers over a square that bears his name. That statue is like 4 times the size of the statue of the Queen. Because this is how much we love our artists. Indeed, because this is an anniversary year of Rembrandt and he's being, really celebrated now, there's a statue of his greatest work, what we now call the Night Watch, which is like this portrait of all of these, soldiers, these police officers from back in the day. And it's recreated in life size in a huge statue. Also, by the way, bigger than the statue of the Queen. So if you wanted to have a statue of yourself in Amsterdam that's bigger than the statue of the Queen, all you had to do was be painted by Rembrandt. Indeed, a generation of Amsterdammers who would otherwise be forgotten to history have their own Wikipedia pages 400 years later because they were painted by Rembrandt. Why? What is so special about this one artist? It's not that he was an amazing artist, although he was. There were a lot of amazing artists. It's that he was also an amazing business person. Because he not only made art, but he made money. He lived where we in Amsterdam like to live, at the intersection of creativity and commerce. And as a side note, hire professional designers so you don't end up with shit like this. I drew this. I'm an engineer. Yeah. Again, I've had this presentation for like a year, right? I could have had that fixed, but it's not fun. When you're an artist, you have to pay attention. You really can't afford to let things slack. You have to really be on top of your game. Consider, for example, the question of pricing. How much do you charge for your app? It seems like a really simple question, but it's actually a really naive question. I found this out recently, the last time I shipped an app and I had to price it, and I asked a friend of mine, like, how do I price my app? Like, how much do you think I should charge? And I expected an answer like €5, €4, free. I expected a number, but what he said was actually, he said, you have to take your gut feeling, but then you have to start like a tier higher than that, because you're always kind of underestimating how much you should be charging for something. But then if it starts to gain some traction, then you're going to want to lower it by one tier. And then if it really starts to get picked up, like if it gets featured or something, then you're going to want to lower it by another tier. And then when your next app is out and you're ready to start promoting that, then you're going to cut this one down to free. But that's like the simplified version. The complicated version is actually available online for you. Go to jury.me. There's a 5-part series on how to price your app. Why do I recommend this? Because jury.me is the homepage of a guy named Michael Jurowitz, who has a degree in economics, who then went to go work at Apple for years and years, about 8 years. And then he left Apple, wrote this, dropped the microphone, and went back to Apple. So it seems like really important information that was really difficult to produce. You owe it to yourself to read this article if you're setting the price of your apps. It's a complicated business. I don't like doing it. I don't like thinking about it. But if you're going to be successful as an artist, you're going to have to pay attention to this kind of very non-artistic stuff. Budgeting. Boy, what says art like budgeting, huh? And yet, what is it that time and time again causes artists to fail? Hell, causes anyone to fail. A lack of budgeting, I would say, is a pretty big part of it. However you want to interpret that. Running out of money, not being able to do what you want to do. So here's another thing where the answer from people smarter than me is more complicated than I want to believe. But not taking this advice shows me that they're probably right. So first you have to picture what you would need to live for a year, right? It's what in business we call a 12-month burn, right? You have to be honest with yourself. Your rent, your food, your drug habit, your kids, whatever your thing is, you have to account for all of the money you're going to spend for a month times 12. A whole year of money, right? Keep that in mind. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we're going to go for just 3 months of burn. Just 3 months, right? A quarter of that amount. Those are your two amounts. Now the span here, this is the span that a lot of people think is the ideal place to kind of quit and start building your own company. But actually no. Actually no. It's actually when you have 12 months of money in the bank that you can start thinking about quitting and starting your own company. Because if you only had 3 months of money in the bank, you have to go get a job at that point, right? Because if you have to go get a job today, you might have your first paycheck in 3 months, right? It takes time to find work. It takes time for that first paycheck to come. It takes time for this stuff to happen. And you never ever want to find out what happens when you run out of money for reals. It's bad times, bad times. So really, the space between 3 months and 12 months of burn, that's the part that we call the suck. That's the part where you have to do anything you can to earn some money to get back up to that threshold so that you don't get down to that threshold and have to give up and go get a job. The thing about this is, I don't know many people who have even 1 month of money in the bank, let alone 3, let alone 12. I've never taken this advice, but I'm going to next time. Because I've seen what happens when you don't respect money, and it isn't good. It isn't helpful to the art. Indeed, I dare say it hinders the art. You need to hustle. That's the other thing, right? If you're going to be an artist, you have to be an artist all the time. If you're going to make product, if you're going to change the world, if you're going to do anything worthwhile, you need to hustle. You're here at a conference, great, that's a good start. I am assuming you all have your business cards. I'm assuming that the smart ones of you brought some stickers or something. Who's on your t-shirt? You know who's on my t-shirt? Lemur's Chemistry. You know who makes that? This guy. Whose logo are you wearing on your t-shirt? Is it not your logo? Why not? Are you in the business of giving free advertising to other companies? Or are you in the business of art? Oh yeah, and then there's the M word. If I had to tell you the number one thing that I have not respected, it would be marketing. I have had no respect for marketeers. I have had no respect for the practice of marketing. I have had no respect for being marketed to. When I make a budget for a product, I don't consider marketing. I consider development, because that's how I think. But you know what happens when you do that? When you get to the end, when you get to what you think is your finish line and you finally get that thing out there, nobody will care. Nobody will care. Nobody will know. Marketing and sales, those are the ones who turn your produce into revenue. I have erred greatly in not respecting marketing and marketeers. Do not make that same mistake. The next time I raise funds for a project, I will take my budget and I will double that. Because marketing deserves the same budget and the same respect as development. If you want to succeed, that's the way it has to be. You want to know how to fail? There's a bunch of ways. Bad ideas are a really good one. This is what, in years of listening to people's app ideas, of listening to people's business ideas, this is something that I've learned. Most ideas are doomed. Just the idea itself is bad. And it always breaks my heart because when someone comes to me with one of these ideas, there's really nothing you can say to them. And so my hope is that maybe if I describe these patterns to you, maybe you'll start to see them before they establish themselves up here, and I have to listen to you describe them and look really sad and know that no matter what I say, I'm not going to dissuade you. What does a bad idea sound like? Well, here's one. It's like blank, but with blank, or for blank, right? It's like Facebook, but for food. It's like Twitter, but for dogs, right? These kinds of services. It's like iTunes, but for sound effects. You know, it's like something that exists, except one little feature that I think that I'm going to add that anybody's going to care about. Like, you think you're going to unseat iTunes because you make something that has one minor feature? No, it's not going to happen. It's way harder than that. The problem with this formula of an idea is that this is what happens when you're looking for something to build that seems realistic or marketable, and so you're looking at things that other people have built, and you're trying to figure out ways that you can improve that to make that your own. But that's not where art comes from, and that's not where money is made anyway. It's from having original ideas. It's for doing things that seem so obvious once they exist, but did not exist before. Those are the things that you want to build, or at the very least, the thing that you are passionate about. I have never, ever been convinced that anyone with an idea that follows this formula was truly passionate about that idea. And I genuinely do not know how to be successful in this business without passion. I'm sure it's possible. There are whole companies that seem to be dedicated to it. But I don't know how. That's not a formula that I can tell you. And then the other bad idea is making a game. Don't do that. Don't make games. Also, don't make games. And don't make games, and don't make games, and don't make games, and don't make games, and blinking red, don't make games. I bet half of you are still gonna make games. Don't make games. Don't. Please, believe me, don't. Look, if you want to make money, you need to solve boring problems, right? This is the fundamental issue with making games. A game doesn't solve any problem. Being bored is not a problem. Being bored and wanting to be entertained has no value proposition, which is why no one is willing to pay for entertainment. Movies, music, apps, we buy these things begrudgingly, unless they're really going to make us some money, unless they're really solving a problem for us, and then we buy them gladly. Value proposition? Value proposition is the thing that I'm talking about here, right? If you have a problem that is costing you, let's say, 100 of your local currency, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. You have 100 of your local currency, and here's an app that costs 20 of your local currency that's going to solve this 100, I'm just going to say it, is it Zoti? Is that what it is? Yeah. Thank you for clapping at my terrible rendition of your beautiful language. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you have 100 Zoti problem and a 20 Zoti app is going to fix it, then that's the easiest money you're ever going to spend. That's what it is. If you're going to make a product, make that product. Don't make the product where they're going to be like, really, 99 cents? No, 99, what is it, grols? Yeah, I don't know. Money, it's hard. See, money, hard. The other thing is competition, right? Like, if you make a game and you upload that to the App Store, there's going to be about 300 other games that are uploaded on the same day. That's about where it's gotten to. Like, every time I look up the number, it's higher. It's probably higher than 300 at this point. It's ridiculous. There are a ridiculous number of games that are uploaded every single day. And you're like, yeah, but all of them are terrible except for mine. Yeah, no, that's not true. But you know how much competition there is for boring products? Not much. Have you ever seen a boring product? It usually looks really horrible. You know, like some piece of software that you're forced to use for your work, it looks horrible. It works horribly. Why? Because there's no competition. It probably costs a bunch of money too, because there's no competition. And it solves a problem that needs to be solved. You want to make that product. Domain scope is another issue. Domain scope is the difference between the idea in your head and the thing that you actually build, right? Domain scope is the thing that you have to temporarily become an expert in and then squeeze that down into software. And it is, I think, one of the most painful parts of the process, because people become very attached to their ideas. People become very attached to the features that they want or to the sub-problems that they want solved. And the domain scope narrowing process becomes very, very ugly. It becomes very, very painful. Getting from the idea to the thing is very painful. When I built this game, Lemur's Chemistry, I wanted to build the singularity. Like, I wanted to build like a computer that we could all upload ourselves into and live forever. Like, that was my project idea. And then domain scope, and then a game about chemistry. The domain scope of business applications, the domain scope of apps that solve problems are defined by the problems that they solve. Which is to say that not only are apps that solve boring problems more profitable, they're also easier to make and understand. Easier to make makes more money. It's a good formula, you should do that. But is it art? That's the thing, isn't it? Who wants to build the next, spreadsheet application? Not many people wake up in the morning excited about that kind of thing. And this, I think, is where there's a huge misconception when it comes to sort of the design and visualization of software, is this idea that there's a separation between that which is useful and that which is a pleasure to use. And I think that that's a false dichotomy. I think that if you think that you can't make an app that is both useful and a pleasure to use, that you need to get over yourself, because that is a bunch of crap. This has been done so many times by what we know as the most successful software companies in the industry. Consider, for example, this app, Checkout, which was made by a company that I was friends for a long time and worked for briefly before they were acquired by Facebook. That was a point-of-sale solution. Point of sale. Is there anything more boring than a cash register? Probably, but not by much. But this app was a beautiful, genuine pleasure to use. I wanted to mess with the app, and I don't even have a cash register. It's just a cool app. And it cost $400. Like $400. That's a lot of money compared to the 99 cents people complain about paying for your game. Or consider an app like Delicious Library, which a lot of people consider to be like the first app, and the second version of which I actually got to work on. This was an app for organizing your personal media collection. This was an app that has existed for as long as computers have been in the hands of private individuals in the forms of spreadsheets and cataloging programs and every other thing. This beautiful app came along and just changed the way that we visualize putting a bunch of media on our computer to know that we have it. This design has been echoed across even Apple's own applications. I mean, it looks a hell of a lot like iBooks, for example. Same designer. It's not like they just stole the design. It's also wood. I mean, it's kind of obvious. But the thing about this app was this. You know what made this app successful? Not the fact that it had a wood grain image in the bundle. The fact that you could scan the barcode of your items using your built-in camera, and that would pull the information from the internet, which today is boring, but at the time was brand new and revolutionary. It was useful. It was actually better than what was before, and also a beautiful pleasure to use. This app sold for $40. I think it still sells for like $30. It's a pretty expensive app. Why? Because organizing your media collection is actually important, right? This is an actual task that has to be done and may actually end up saving you money. Most people with a significant enough media collection that they would think about getting a cataloging program, when they would use this app, would find that they had at least 2 or 3 duplicate items that the app would then let them sell and recoup the money of the app. Value proposition. Not a hard decision to make. And then there's Kaleidoscope, which if you're on a Mac and you're doing any kind of diffing operation, you should definitely be using Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope is just, it turns diffing into a pleasure. This was an app that was, again, made by my friends at Sofa, and then when they got bought out, it went to a company called Black Pixel, who I've been known to work with, and it continues to exist to this day. Like, the company that made it went away, but the app was so good that it continues to exist. And it's like 50, 60, 70 bucks. It's really expensive compared to like a game. But if you have one merge conflict, you will spend that money so hard when you see this app work. I would pay a person 70 bucks per merge conflict to not have to deal with that crap. At the end of the day, engineering is hard. Art is hard. Creation is hard. Making things that matter is hard. Engineering is hard because humans are confusing. Like, I have such a hard time just hanging out and talking to even my fellow nerds, let alone knowing what people are thinking, let alone knowing what people want, let alone knowing what this person's problem is when I'm getting the support email. Like, people are confusing, but people are exactly who we're making software for, because people are who buy software, and that's how we eat. Also, that whole idea of perfection is just unattainable, right? Like, if all it had to be was perfect, this job would be easy. But the thing is that perfection is not something that you will ever achieve. Engineering is not about perfection. Engineering is about making a series of compromises that make it as less bad as possible. Is that grammatical? Yeah, whatever. It's early. It's not that early, but I'm a nerd. The other thing is that if you're gonna make something that actually matters, you're gonna have to actually build it. Like, you're gonna actually have to work on it. And I'm sure you guys have no problem with this. I'm sure you guys are like, fine, no problem. We'll build this, we're software people, that's fine. This is a software conference by developers for developers. But you would be surprised how many people have an idea and an incredibly small amount of money and think that they're gonna have the next world-changing app made by somebody else. As if Rembrandt merely dictated what would be painted and had students do the painting for him. This is not what happened. That's Thomas Kincaid. That's somebody else. The other thing is that coding, like the actual act of coding, really expensive. I don't know if you've all noticed this, coding for a living as most of us do, but it's hard. Like, it's hard on you, it's hard on your body, at least for me. It's like, I feel like I'm actually taking years off of my life when I code. Like, making software is not something that can just be done willy-nilly for free. Making software, at least for me, is something that really takes something out of me, you know? Coding is expensive. And like art through adversity, I really believe that. I've never seen anybody, I've never seen a team that has made something that I've been really impressed with and then heard that team later say, it was easy, it was fun, like we always got along, it was a genuine pleasure. It's always like, I love these guys, I respect these guys. There were really times when I thought I was gonna kill these guys, but you know, we survived, and well, not all of us, but most of us survived. It's hard. Making art is hard. You rarely hear about the artists who lived a great and pleasurable life. Even Rembrandt ran into problems despite his money. And the sacrifice that you will have to make to create something that's good, you need to make it worthwhile, right? You're gonna lose things, you're gonna lose your own time that could be better spent with your kids. You're gonna kill your babies. I don't mean literally, hopefully, please don't, but I mean like your software babies, you know, your pet features, the things that you love the most. When I was making this chemistry game, you know, it's called Lemur's Chemistry because I like lemurs. So it features lemurs and it features chemistry. And at one point, we had to take out a bunch of the chemistry, like not the chemistry itself, that's built in, but like there were like 20 illustrated pages that explained all the chemistry in the game, and people just didn't get it. And I just had to take it out. Like we couldn't fix it, I had to take it out. The guys who worked on it will never speak to me again. Ever. To this day. Like, it's not even that they're like mad at me, they just won't even, I don't exist to them anymore. Like, they spent a month making 20 pages and I took it out. Fuck me. And then I had to turn around and take out most of the lemurs. It's pain, you know? It's pain making the software. And like, you lose your friends. You know, you're gonna lose your friends. I mean, that's the thing about it, right? Because, look, you're either gonna work with your friends, in which case you're probably gonna hate each other, at least for a little while afterwards, and, you know, or you're not gonna work with your friends, in which case you're not gonna see them anymore, you're not gonna talk to them anymore, you're not gonna be friends with them anymore, because you're gonna be building your thing. They're not gonna be part of that. And it's gonna make a separation between you. And I don't mean like your fake internet friends. I mean like real friends in a real friendship that demands a continually refreshing physical presence. The people with whom you can genuinely rely will be hurt, will be lost by the work you have to do. And at the end of it all, you're gonna be disappointed. Like that, for me, is like there's nothing I've ever shipped where I've just been like, ah, oh, perfect, masterpiece. Slap that right out the door. No, it's always like, oh, it was supposed to be so good. You know, and people are like, I really love the app, and I'm like, but it was supposed to be so good. You really kill yourself for this stuff. I really kill myself for this stuff. I don't know. If you can figure out how to do this stuff without killing yourself, I'd like to know. And because that's the thing, right? Like I don't know. I don't know everything about making apps. Like I know a bunch of technical stuff, but I don't know all the technical stuff, and I certainly don't know enough about accounting. I'm a terrible designer, as you've seen from my awful drawing up there. My biggest talent, genuinely, is, despite being just completely terrible at socializing, I managed to maintain relationships with some incredibly smart and talented people. And sometimes when I've gotten really excited about something, I've managed to get those people to come together and just really help me to make the thing that's in my head. And that's when that thing has been successful. Like locking yourself into a room to produce the next great thing is just not how it's done anymore. There's a team of people, like even, let's say you're an amazing software engineer and you also happen to be an incredible designer. And let's forget the fact that, by doing it all yourself, you're splitting your attention. Let's just pretend you're all of those things. Are you also a tax accountant? Because if you make any money, the government's gonna be a big pain in your ass, And speaking of which, are you an attorney? Because if you're successful at all, somebody's probably gonna try to sue you or something. And for that matter, you're gonna do all the sales and marketing by yourself, because even if you could, you know that would take up all of your time and you wouldn't be able to do anything else. And what about support? When you're talking about taking someone's problem into your care for money, that's a kind of responsibility. That's a kind of long-term relationship that requires help. Just the way that building your business requires help, just the way that building your products requires help. And for many of us, for me certainly, the more you do, the better you get, the harder it gets to ask for help, to even recognize that you need help. But I think that it's the most important thing. I think that the help that I've gotten from the people in my community is the number one thing that is responsible for me being right here with you. A genuine pleasure in my life that is surprising and humbling. Not because of me, because of those who have helped me. With a conference like this, where you can meet people, this is where you get help. The people that you meet at this conference today, the people who you talk to outside in the halls or play games against later tonight, those are your new best friends. Pay attention to those people. Don't just wait for your turn to talk, but really listen to who they are, because you might need them later. The way we all need each other. And don't just do the conference thing, right? Like, we started this whole organization, Amsterdam, on this idea of having a tech conference all the time, of not letting this be something that we only do once in a while, getting together like this and exchanging information and getting to know each other, but making this the way that we live our lives constantly. It can be as easy as just, go down to the bar once in a while where your fellow nerds are, Meet some people, make friends. I know. Friends, but friends. I don't know. It's funny, maybe I'm the antisocial one and you're all super social and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have lots of friends and they're all super smart. I don't know. For me, it's hard. If you're interested, by the way, in Amsterdam, one of the original founders of Amsterdam, this guy, Piotr Kaczynski, is actually from Warsaw. He's here now and started an Amsterdam embassy for a while out here. But we do everything now over GitHub. So if you go to github.com/amsterdam/open, like everything we've learned in going on 3 years of trying to make a perpetual technology conference, we try to put this in the GitHub. Not just so that we can read it, but so that you all can read it. Because to us, it's not even important that it's called Amsterdam. It's important that you all be friends. It's important that you all keep the magic and the vibe that you get at a conference like this going in your entire lives. That's where the magic is going to come from. I've got about 2.5 minutes, so I'm going to talk a little bit about chemistry, because you got to hustle. If you don't mind, if you're like you really got to pee and you want to walk out, I'm not offended. I mentioned I like water. made a game about water. That's how much I like it. That's water. That one right there. I wanted to make a game that was educational, not because I had taken a game and then put some education on top of it, but because I had taken something from science, something that really exists, and made it into a game. You know, because every game is just a bunch of rules, and science is just a bunch of rules. So if you could just make those the same rules, then when you play the game, you'd actually be learning something, instead of when you finish the game and you're like, wow, I have a lot of knowledge about a people and culture that don't really exist, and a problem that never really happened. You know, I don't even know what I want to say about this game. I mean, it's not successful. Like, it doesn't make any money. So if you're thinking like, you know, well, you said don't make games, but no, this is something that is self-financed. You know, it's like an expensive hobby, making games. But at the same time, like I like making games, not because it'll make money, not because it's a good idea, but because it's hard. But because it's hard and I fail at it so much, and it really teaches what the most important things in you as an engineer, as a designer, as an artist, as a creator, the most important things for you to have inside you are not really the technical skills, they're not really the feel for the market, it's not even really keeping up with trends or predicting the future. I think that the thing that you need inside you, the thing that, you know, an exercise like making a game and failing at it a bunch can do for you, humility and gratitude. Those ultimately are the secrets of success, not just in business, but in life. Thank you. I'm gonna go like, I have a little time for Q&A, but I'm gonna be hanging out in the lobby all day, because I'm a speaker, I don't really go to the sessions because I'm here for you guys. So if you wanted to talk about anything or whatever that we can't cover in questions, or you just want to, anything, like I'll just be around, so just come find me. Any questions? Nah, you gotta let it sink in, maybe, huh? I know, I do that, I'm sorry.
What's up currently?
What's that?
What's up currently?
What's up currently? With me, in general?
With you?
With me? Well, okay, so I spent like all the money I had making this game. Because I'm bad with money, right? I told you. This is not advice because I'm like awesome. This is like advice because I fail a lot, but I'm not embarrassed by it, right? Like to me, it's really important that I give information to you guys and help you. Because it's not as important to me that I succeed, it's important to me that we succeed, like as a whole. Not just in the whole world, right? It's important that we all succeed. So it doesn't really matter if you succeed or fail as a person, as long as the information can be passed forward, right? So when I say, like, really you should have like a year of money in the bank before you even consider paying your own paycheck, I'm not saying that because like I'm awesome at business. I'm saying that because I know firsthand, right? So I spent all that money to make the game, which has sold, I think, 400 copies in the world. Like nobody cares, right? Nobody cares. So now I'm just like, you know, I have a contracting business. My friends at Black Pixel, you know, have had me doing some work for them, and I do some work for other people. I maintain like a, you know, really cheap kind of €100, like tell me your idea and we'll talk about it for an hour over Skype kind of service. I mean, little things like that. I have a really simple life. Sometimes I teach at Big Nerd Ranch. But you know, it just comes to like doing things that I like with people that I like in order to make the money to support what is essentially an expensive hobby. But I do seriously question whether if I'm going to spend, you know, a third of my life, well, asleep, and then a third of my life making software to pay the bills, maybe I shouldn't spend the other third of my life also making software. So I consider if maybe I wouldn't be better off like becoming a writer as an expensive hobby, because that's something else I could fail at. That would be different from making games, right? Yeah, no, it's kind of it. You know, it's kind of like getting to that realization. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm working on games. Like, I have a bunch of other games in development because it's just like an addiction, making games and this idea of the educational games. It's perverse, but it's like I hope that people will see what I'm trying to do with these games, and they'll be like, this guy's an idiot, but he has a good idea, and then they'll make the game, and then they'll be successful, and then everyone will make games that way, and then everyone will be smarter, and then everything will be better. That's my game. Does that answer the question? I know that's a lot of words.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Yeah. All right, that's cool. Like I said, oh, did you have something?
Next one. Are you interested only in iOS or Android too?
That's a good question. You know, so it's funny because like I'm an unabashed Apple bigot. Like really, I worked there. I you know, been on the platform since it existed. But I've probably done more for the Android community than most Android developers ever will. You know, because I'm a community organizer, and with Amsterdam, you know, we really wanted it to be something for everybody, not just an Apple club, but also for Android, for web people, and for that matter, for the lawyers and the marketeers and all the other people that we need to work with who are interested in apps, so that we can all come together and talk about technology in a way that's not, you know, specific about, you know, where we don't get the religion and the politics of what we do kind of mixed into it. So for me, it's like, as an artist, if you'll forgive that, I like the canvas of iOS. Like, that's how I feel most comfortable expressing myself. So for me, if I made something that was gonna actually be good and successful, it would be made in iOS, but the point at which it became good and successful, it would probably want to be on Android and, you know, maybe Windows, other platforms. But I wouldn't do that myself. Not because, you know, I feel it's beneath me or anything stupid like that, but because I'm an Apple guy. I think like Apple people, and I do Apple-y things. And it would be the biggest insult in the world to the Android users of the world to go Apple it up on their platform. Like, I need to find people who love Android the way that I love iOS to make the Android version of an app, because the Android users deserve just as much respect as the iOS users. That's what it comes down to. So, me personally, I'm a terrible person and a bigot, but in the broader sense, I really try to hold all things equal. Yeah?
It looks like you're giving a lot of advice on what we should do, but you don't follow your own advice. What are you doing different to follow your own advice?
Well, for example, like you know, I've given up on the idea of building a game company that is a profitable venture based on making games. Like, I don't have the money or the capabilities to put together a company that can do that. So like I said, it's more like an expensive hobby, right? You know, the budgeting thing, it's the same thing, right? Like, I will never again start paying myself a salary with less than a year of burn for, you know, whatever. Like, if I have, you know, 5 people with me, I'm gonna need, you know, 6x 12 months burn. You know, I take that very, very much more seriously now. You know, the whole marketing and budgeting thing. But the thing you have to understand is, like, the pain that I'm trying to convert into advice, it's recent pain. It's new stuff. So, you know, I'd love to be able to tell you, like, you know, and then I did this and I did it right, but I used to give that talk, right? I used to give the, like, I've been successful and here's what I think I did to be successful talk, but I don't believe any of that shit. Not that I don't believe it personally, I don't believe it scientifically, right? Like, the math doesn't add up, right? The math tells us that if you're successful, it's probably because you're lucky. So you should really more concentrate on when you're not successful and think about the ways you're doing it wrong. That's really where you want to concentrate. Hence, you know, the talk of, here are all the ways that I screwed up on my last project. I recommend you do it differently. The other thing is, like, it's very painful, this stuff, right? Like, it's extremely painful to kind of go through this. And you know, you don't go to somebody and ask them, for example, like, how do I budget, you know? Like, how do I plan for you know, for things like this? You don't go to somebody like that necessarily when you're feeling really good about yourself. You know, it's like, oh my God, everything's on fire. What do I do? That's when you really seek out, I think, or at least for me, that's when I seek out the advice of experts. Not when I'm feeling good, but when I'm feeling bad. So it's kind of like, you don't have to make the mistake that I made, cry the way that I cried, and then, you know, show up on the doorstep of some certified accountant to get advice. You can just take it from me, or don't. I mean, you should, but it's like, when you give people advice, the best thing that you can hope is that they ignore the advice, but that they remember the advice, so that although they're going to screw up in the same way you did anyway, maybe they'll catch it sooner and learn the lesson faster. Yeah. That's about it, huh? Okay, great. I'll be outside if anybody else wants to talk, and thank you all for listening so very patiently.